Okay, guys, so as you can see here, first of all, we have the homework that we had from last session, which is about statements. Okay, you sent me your answers and I looked at them. First of all, if we think about the first two questions, everybody got the answers right. So yes, the authors indicate that people value giving because they feel it can serve to strengthen a relationship. And as we know, the evidence for this question, and this is for the next question, evidence, it comes here, right? Many relish the opportunity to buy presents. Why? Because gift-giving offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds with one's peers. So this is the exact same thing when we say can serve to strengthen a relationship. As we said, don't expect the options to give you the exact sentence or to use the exact words for the right answer. Okay, they will have different structures, different sentences, different words, but the idea is the same. And that's our focus here. And since we got our answer from this part, of course, when we answered question number 2, we said that the best evidence for our answer in the previous question is A, lines between 10 and 30. Okay, so we have no issue with that. For the other two questions, again, most of us got them right, but maybe one or two of us got one of them wrong or both of them. So very quickly, let's just look at this. Now here I want to highlight this strategy. So of course here, as we said, whatever you use, what kind of strategy or method you follow, don't skip the blurb, okay? So here, I know that this is taken from a novel called The Balloonist, and it's telling us that during the summer of 1897, the narrator of this story, who's a fictional Swedish scientist, has set out for the North Pole. How? In a hydrogen-powered balloon. Okay, so I know that the story, is about a fictional, imaginary character. This character is a Swedish scientist who's going to the North Pole in a hydrogen-powered balloon. Now, the strategy that I want to follow here, that most of the time, guys, when we have a question followed by evidence question like this, we can actually start with the evidence first, okay? So I know that these two questions are connected, and the second question is just asking for evidence for the previous one. So what I do with first is that, of course, I should read the question only without looking at the options. The narrator indicates, we said, whenever we see the word indicates, we know that this is a statement question. And then many previous explorers seeking the North Pole have what? What happened to these previous explorers? Because you cannot just go to number 4 without reading the question, because of course you are looking for evidence. You have to understand what the question is about, okay? So now I know that they are asking me about what happened to those many explorers who were seeking the North Pole, okay? I can start from line 20, for example, because this is the beginning here. So nobody has succeeded in this thing and many have died. So this could be my answer, okay? But here, for example, I can feel that I need context. Who is nobody that has succeeded in this thing and many have died? If you go just, for example, 1 or 2 sentences maximum before, just to get the context, I know that if you choose this answer, then the answer is here, but you need to understand what nobody refers to, okay? So here we can see, for example, rising slowly from the earth that bore me and gave me sustenance, I'm carried helplessly toward an uninhabited and hostile, or at best, indifferent part of the earth, littered with the bones of explorers. So this is another reference to their death, right? The bones of explorers and the wrecks of ships. So I know that there are also destroyed ships, frozen supply caches, messages scrawled with chilled fingers and hidden in cairns that no eye will ever see. So now I understand that nobody refers to those explorers. I already have one reference here with their bones, so that refers to their death. And then it's mentioned explicitly in the sentence that we can choose as evidence that nobody has succeeded in this thing and many have died. Okay, then I can, if I'm not sure enough, then of course I go and check the other options. So for example, 25, all this I understand as I understand each detail of the technique by which this is carried out. Here, of course, there is no reference about what? About those previous explorers. So I cannot choose it as evidence. And so on and so forth. I check all the other options. But now, since I feel that A is the right answer, is there any answer from the previous question that matches it? What do you think? What should we use? Which option?
A.
Yes, they perished in attempt. Because perished, when we use it to talk about people, then perish simply means die. And that's what's mentioned in these lines. So now I'm 100% sure that my answer is correct. So this is something that we can also take from this course. Whenever there's a question followed by an evidence question like this, 90% of the time it works if you start with the evidence first, read the specific lines, and see if these specific lines deal with the idea that you highlighted in the previous question. Remember, of course, that you have to read the question without looking at the options, and then you read the lines in the next question that refer to those keywords. If you have any of them talking about the idea mentioned in the previous question, you can base your answer on it and try to match it to the other options in the previous question. If you can see that, you know, the lines that you choose make sense, but you have no answer that matches them, then it means your evidence is wrong and you have to check it again. Okay? All right. So if you remember, the first skill that we covered in reading so far was vocabulary in context. And then number 2, we said the skill is called reading
Closely.
Yes, thank you. Closely. When we said reading closely, simply we're talking about details. That's what it means to read it closely. And we said details are of 2 types. We have something that is directly mentioned in the passage, and this is the part of statements that we've just done together. And the second part, we have also something mentioned, but this time indirectly, which means we have to read between the lines. We have to bring the data together and try to make sense of it. But it must be mentioned, okay? It doesn't mean that you choose something that you think is okay. Because sometimes how they trick us with this kind of details, they give you an answer that makes sense. And if you think about it, it may be true. But remember, I always tell you that the test that we have, the SAT, is called evidence-based. So never choose an answer just because it makes sense. Of course, it must make sense, but it must also be there in the passage. So when you ask yourself, so what do I understand from these 2 or 3 pieces of information if I connect them together? Okay, I get this idea. Is that mentioned? If yes, then you can choose it. And this is what we call now inferences. So the main difference between statements and inferences is that statements are mentioned there directly and inferences indirectly. I don't know if I have a problem in the internet access that I have, but if there is something serious, just tell me, okay? All right. So as you can see here, making inferences tests your ability to draw conclusions and make logical guesses about the information that is not directly stated in the passage. So these are even the keywords here. Draw conclusions, make logical guesses about information that is not directly stated in the passage. Okay, so how can we make an inference? You need to look at the information or evidence that you do find in the passage, and then you use critical thinking skills. What do we mean by here by critical thinking skills? Of course, we're talking about connecting information together. We're talking about understanding the relationship between ideas and so on. Okay, And this is the kind of answer that we are looking for. As I told you, your answer first must be reasonable. It must be logical. It must make sense. But what's more important is that it can be supported by the information that you have in the passage. If you think that the answer is correct, but if you want to support it, you have no information in the passage that supports your answer, then that's not the right answer. Okay, do you have any questions so far? Is everything clear? Shall we proceed? Give me an answer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What are the steps to answer inference questions? Look, they are the exact same steps we follow for statements. Read your question, highlight your keywords. Go and scan the passage to find the keywords, or at least their synonyms, to find the same idea. As we say, focus on the idea. Okay?
Mr. Yusuf?
Yep.
Yahya sent me that he needs the number, what is it called? The ID, yeah, the password. Do you have it or something? Because it's not working for him.
Okay, I'll send the whole thing on the group again now.
Can you send, no, like the number, the ID itself?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So as we were saying, they are the same steps we use for statements, keywords, scan for them, eliminate the answers that you are sure that they are wrong, and then choose the best answer. Okay. Now, again, let's remember, guys, that the questions, or let's say most of the questions, are given in the same order of how the information is presented in the passage. And the other thing is, of course, each question is worded in a way that tells you the type of the question. If you remember, for example, we said for a statement question, you can have the question says, according to the passage. So when your question starts with this phrase, according to the passage, you know that this is a statement question. But if it says it can reasonably be inferred, of course, this is an extra B, we don't need it. It can reasonably be inferred that, then you know it's an inference question. Or the question can use the word implies, suggest, most likely, and would. Because would, again, it's an inference. Now, for example, here we have according to the passage. Isn't it, statement? No. If you just have according to the passage like this, it's a statement. But after according to the passage, if you have words like most likely and would, of course, that will make it what? Inference. So remember, the first step that you need to take when you answer a question is to decide the type of the question. Are you asked about the meaning of a word? Are you asked about a statement or an inference or evidence? Okay? So that's it. Know the steps. We already know them because we did them last time, because they are the same steps we use for statements. But this time, to know that they are not directly mentioned, you have to see one of these words: inferred, implies, suggest, most likely. And of course, you can add the word would. Okay? Whenever you see one of these words in the... Yeah. Whenever you see any of these words in the question, you know that you are asked about an inference. Okay, now let's understand how a statement is different from an inference. So we have the same passage here that we've just read about the balloonist, who is a fictional Swedish scientist who has set out for the North Pole in a hydrogen-powered balloon. Okay, and again, when we are doing the questions together, what we do is we imagine that you've read the whole passage, if that's your way, if you prefer to read the passage first. But again, we said, if you're fast, if you have good vocabulary and good comprehension, then you don't have to read the whole thing first. You can immediately go to the questions. Okay, so let's see here. The question that the narrator asks in lines 29 to 30. Okay, will it until the word railway. Most nearly implies that. Now, this is another important note we can take now. When they give you specific lines mentioned in the passage, again, 90% of the time, the answer is not in those lines. Okay? This is a general rule on the SAT. Again, there are exceptions. That's why I always say 80%, 90% of the time. So 90% of the time, when they give you specific lines mentioned in the question, okay, then the answer is not in these lines, which means now if you go to the passage and you just read lines 29 and 30, you will not get the answer. They give you specific lines, but you have to get context. Okay, where do I go? Where do I start? You have two options, okay? So let me just write it here so that everybody can see it, okay? And remember, there are exceptions. It doesn't mean that this kind of question is not stable. No, it means it depends on the type of the question itself, okay? But we can easily say that, okay, here, when specific lines are given in a certain question, okay, the answer is, again, I'm saying usually, is not in those lines. Okay, that's one important note. Okay, let me ask the other ones. Guys, do you feel that I have a problem with the internet? Like, am I lagging or something?
No, you're good.
Is everything clear?
Yeah.
Okay, somebody has to check their internet then. Okay. Thank you. All right. So what do we do? If I cannot just read those 2 or 3 lines that are mentioned in the question, what do I do? Now here you have 2 options, okay? Here is the answer, where to start reading to get the answer. Number 1, if the paragraph that includes those lines, okay? If the paragraph that includes those lines is short, so if it's a short paragraph, okay, then read from the beginning of the paragraph. Why are we doing that? Remember, it's all about context. So we are doing this to get context. Okay, number 2, if the paragraph that includes those lines is already very long, you know, let me just see. Just a second, I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, we were saying if the paragraph is long and if it's like 20, 30 lines, of course, you're not going to go back to the beginning of the paragraph. That's going to be too long and you're going to be wasting your time. Just you can go back 2 sentences before the mentioned lines. Okay, that's it. And that's what we're going to do here now. So if we go back to our question, it says lines 29 and 30. If we go and look at them, okay, so of course, this is 29 and 30. It says, will it carry you from Gothenburg to Malmö like a railway? As you can see, of course, this is just a question. And here they are asking us, what does the author imply by asking this question? So of course, the answer is not here. I need context. Now, if you look at the paragraph, actually, it's from the beginning of the passage, because all of this that you can see is one paragraph. So I'm not going to start from line 1, but since the lines are 29 and 30, I can, for example, go to, let's say, 24. Okay, like 5-6 lines before. Let's see. So, of course, why are we reading before? Remember, we're just trying to get the context to understand what the author is implying by asking this question. So, I have converted the machinery of my fate into the servant of my will. All this I understand, as I understand each detail of the technique by which this is carried out. So, in this context, okay, we're talking about how he understands the power of his fate and how he converted his fate into his will, right? Now, here's the point. What I don't understand is, and here is the focus, guys, because usually when they give you lines, then they are just emphasizing the idea that's mentioned before the lines. So this is our focus here. What I don't understand is why I am so intent on going to this particular place. This is the main idea. This is the main point here, that he's not really sure why he's doing this. Why is he going to the North Pole in a hydrogen-powered balloon? He understands the issue of fate. He understands the issue of will. He understands how this is going to be carried out because he's a scientist. The one thing that he doesn't understand is why he insists on going to this place. Okay, so now we know what the main idea or the main point in this part of the passage is. And you will notice that the question that is highlighted in our question, it's not the only question that's asked about this point. It starts from the next sentence. Who wants the North Pole? Actually, this is the first question. Or here it's an exclamation, So why am I going there? Who wants the North Pole? What good is it? Can you eat it? And then you will see that the question that they gave us in our question is just part of this series of questions that he's asking himself. Who wants the North Pole? What good is it? Can you eat it? Will it carry you from one city to another like a train? So now here's the thing. Let's ask ourselves now, guys, why do you think he's asking himself these questions? First of all, is he expecting an actual answer for these questions? Good. So this is what we call in English rhetorical questions. A rhetorical question is a question that you're not really seeking an answer to. Okay, it's just to express feelings. Okay, so when you're, for example, sad, disappointed, something did not go the way you wanted, you just say, why is this happening to me? Of course, you don't expect somebody to come and answer you, well, this is happening to you because of 1, 2, 3. You're just, for example, asking the question, why is this happening to me? To show or to express feelings of disappointment, sadness, and so on. So we know that these are rhetorical questions. He's not seeking actual answers. But again, let me ask you the same question. If he's not trying to get answers to these questions, why is he asking these questions?
He's just wondering. He's just wondering.
Wondering about what?
About the North Pole. Why do they want it or something?
Remember that these questions follow the main point we mentioned. What is the main point in the context here?
Is it kind of making fun of something?
Well, I get what you mean. I'm not sure if making fun is the best way to express the feeling or the idea.
Why he's stubborn or he wants to go to this particular place?
Exactly. Since we have these 4 questions following the main point that we highlighted, which is he doesn't understand why he's going there. Because now let's just try to answer these questions. According to him, since he sees, no reason to go there, he's asking himself, who wants the North Pole? What do you expect the answer to be? No one wants the North Pole. What good is it? It's good for nothing. Can you eat it? Of course not. Will it carry you from one city to another like a train? Of course not. So these questions are showing us how he feels about going there. he doesn't understand why he even is going there. That's the context. And it's very important to understand the context to answer inference questions. Now I'm going to, give you a few moments to think about the options that you have in front of you, A, B, C, and D, and send me your answer on the chat box. Remember, this is an inference question. We understand the context now, and they're asking us, what does the author imply? What does he, refer to or suggest when he asks this question? Muhammad, where are you, man? Muhammad, are you there? Okay, then where are you? I cannot see you. Where is your answer? All right, so far, those who send me their answers agreed that the right answer is D. And yes, it is the right answer. What he's implying by asking these questions is that he sees no benefit to humanity by just going to the North Pole. And that's why he's telling us, what good is it? Who wants it? Can you eat it? Will it carry you? And so on. Again, how is this inference different from, a statement question like we did before? I'm going to ask you very simply, does he state in a direct way, in one way or another, that he thinks going to the North Pole is not beneficial or useful to humanity?
No.
No. But they give us hints. They give us the context. They give us information that if we connect together, then we're going to draw these conclusions. But remember, here, I'm not just saying D is right because it makes sense. No, because I have evidence, regarding this answer. What is my evidence? My evidence starts here. What I don't understand is why I'm so intent on going to this particular place. And then the rest of the part where we have the questions. Because remember, even if this is a logical guess, if we want to call it like that, remember that we need evidence. And again, as you can see here, inference questions, just like statement questions, are usually followed by evidence questions. So here now we have another passage with other questions. So we're going to do this together, okay? And then I'm going to leave the final passage here with the 3 questions that follow, 4, 5, and 6, for you to do them on your own, and then we can take our answers. But now let's do questions 2 and 3 together. As usual, it doesn't matter what your strategy is, read the blurb, read the description, because it's very important. Let's see here. I think I went back to the same passage. Okay, this is the one that we're looking for. Okay, so this passage is adapted from Alan Ehrenhold. So he's talking here about the great inversion and the future of the American city. All right, so the title is usually mentioned in the blurb, which gives us some idea. So we have the idea of inversion and the future of American cities. Okay, let's say I don't know what inversion means, and that's going to be a problem for me to understand the passage. Now, remember, when they give you a specific term that is used in one area of study, they will explain it to you, so you don't have to worry about that. So first of all, they're telling us that Ehrenhold, the author, is an urbanologist. And even they assume that maybe we don't know what an urbanologist is. So they tell us, an urbanologist is a scholar of cities and their development. So the person who studies cities and their development is called an urbanologist. Good. What else? We said we might not know what inversion means, right? Again, it's mentioned there. Demographic inversion is a phenomenon that describes what? The rearrangement of living patterns throughout a metropolitan area. Of course, metropolitan is an adjective that refers to large cities. Okay, and how these living patterns where people live, because in a very large city, you know, you're gonna see like specific communities are concentrated in specific areas. So these are what we mean by living patterns. Okay, so maybe, for example, you'll find an area for the rich people in the city, and there's another area for the poor people, some other area for example, doctors, engineers, and so on. So this is what we mean by living patterns. Okay, so the blurb is very good. The blurb is telling us about the author, that he's an urbanologist, a person who studies cities and their development. The blurb is telling us what demographic inversion means, which is the rearrangement of living patterns. And even we have the title. So now we know that we're talking about the inversion itself and the future of the American city. Okay, that's why the blurb is very important. It can give you a lot of information to make it easy for you to understand what the topic is about. Okay, now, this time, I'm going to just show you, what if we decide to read the passage first? We said that we're going to read fast and we're going to focus on keywords. So how do I know these are keywords? Okay, look. Now, much of our perspective on the process of metropolitan settlement, okay, so we're talking about metropolitan settlement here, dates, whether we realize it or not, from a paper written in 1925 by the University of Chicago sociologist Ernest W. Burgess. So as you can see, these 4 places that I highlighted, they summarize everything that I have in these 4 lines. So I'm talking about metropolitan settlement. It's written in a paper. The paper was written in 1925. The writer is Ernest Burgess. Okay, it was Burgess who defined, what did he define? 4 urban/suburban zones of a settlement. And then look, you see a colon. We know from the writing section that a colon is followed by a clarification and explanation. Okay, and since we have 4, it's also a list. So now they are going to explain what these 4 areas are. Okay, number 1, central business district. Okay, so first is for business. Number 2, manufacturing. Number 3, residential area. For whom? For the immigrant working class. The 4th area, and finally, an outer enclave for single family dwellings. Okay, so these are the 4 zones that he talks about in his paper about metropolitan settlement. Remember, after we're doing this highlighting and summarizing and understanding what's going on, first of all, we're getting our head really focused on the main ideas. Number 2, I'm connecting information together. Okay, so Burgess was right about the urban America of 1925. What does that mean, guys, that he was right about the urban America of 1925? It means that the way he divided the city into 4 areas, that's what happened in that year when he wrote the paper. And here is our inference now. He was right about urban America of 1974. Sometimes inference is just, if I'm telling you that he was right in the year 25, and I know that in the year 25, he was talking about 4 areas. And then I tell you that, you know what, but he was also right about those areas in 74. And then I ask you, here is the trick now. And then if I ask you, the passage implies that American cities in 1974, because now when we look at 1974, we have just this sentence. He was right about the urban America of 1974. So what does that mean? He was right about it. He was right about it, just like he was right about it in 1925. What happened in 1925? He wrote a paper What did he do in that paper? He talked about those 4 urban suburban zones. Okay? Now, so what is the answer? The American cities in 1974 were witnessing the flight of minority populations to the suburbs? No. Had begun to lose their manufacturing sectors? Exactly, no. Had a traditional 4-zone structure? Yes. Now, how did we make that inference? Again, because they said that he was right about the American city in 1925, and he was right about it in 1974. So I'm going to connect 74 to the 4 areas. Okay, so the answer is C. But where is the real trick now? After everything we said, you know, then we can say, all right, where did we get our answer from? Where is our evidence? So maybe we can say, okay, so the idea of 4 areas was mentioned here, like it was Burgess who defined 4 urban zones, and that's our answer, for example. But no. Why? Because everything that was mentioned here, okay, the 4 areas themselves, everything that's mentioned here is about 1925. But remember, your question, and that's the trick, your question is not about the American cities in 1925, it's about 1974. Now, despite the fact that it's the same answer for areas, you have to be careful, because A doesn't work and B doesn't work. Okay, which one works then? After they mentioned 1974, if you read, they repeat the same description. Virtually every city in the country had a downtown, number 1, commercial, just the same as business here. And then it had a factory district. Where do we produce things? Where do we manufacture things? In a factory. Number 3, it's the same, working class. And number 4, here we said wealthy and upper middle class. How do we know they are wealthy and upper middle? They said single family. Of course, when we say single family dwelling, then we're talking about a farm, we're talking about a villa, we're talking about something like that. So usually it's owned by rich people. And that's why the 3rd area is for working class, which is usually blocks of apartments. But when people get rich, they usually move a little bit out of the city center so that they can buy a villa and enjoy their lives. That's why, yes, we got our understanding from this part, but this part is about 1925. This is the trick again. They're not asking about 25, they're asking you here about 74. And that's why if they ask you, where's your evidence? You're going to say it is C, because you have to be patient. And C, starting from virtually, is just repeating what we already read about 1925. Again, how is that an inference question then? The answer is simple. He was right about the urban America of 1974. Do they state directly that in 1974, the cities were divided into 4 areas? No. But this time it was a little bit, obvious for us what happened in the city. But still, that's the main distinction between a statement and an inference. A statement will mention it directly there. But sometimes, in the options, they change words, they change structures, but the idea will still be the same for the right answer. Here, the only difference is that you cannot find the answer in the passage mentioned directly. You need to connect information. You need to understand the relationship of ideas so that you can make a conclusion and get the right answer. Do we have any questions? Okay. Now, again, I already, as usual, sent you this document on the WhatsApp group. Now we have a different passage, okay? This passage is adapted from Emily Athens' Frankenstein's Cat. Look, we agreed that to understand what the passage is generally about, we read the blurb, right? But what if we have a blurb like this? It just gives us the name of the author and the title, and we don't really understand what's going on. Look, That's gonna happen. But when they know that when there is no enough information in the blurb, then the same kind of information that is usually found in the blurb, they will put it in the first paragraph. Okay, guys. So that's another tip. When your blurb is just 1 or 2 lines like this, and it doesn't give you any information about the type of the topic, the title, the discussion, and so on, and you usually don't read the whole passage, then read the first paragraph only, because they will intentionally mention ideas that that are usually mentioned in the blurb. They will do that and mention them in the first paragraph. So now, for example, you can read the first paragraph just to understand the main idea, and then you go to the questions, highlight keywords. If there is evidence question, you know what to do, and then you have another question here. So we have 3 questions, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to give you 6 minutes, let's say. Of course, you should not spend 6 minutes on 3 questions on the test, but now because we are practicing, I'm giving you a little bit extra time so that you can make sure your answers are correct. Okay, guys.
Can I
6
ask
minutes.
something?
Yes, sure.
What if the first paragraph was long?
All right. Look, read until you at least get, an insight about, okay, what this passage is about. Okay. And look, that's the point. Usually when they don't give you enough information in the blurb, they will not give you a very long paragraph. Like here, it's 9 lines. And remember, when we say lines here, technically a line is half a line because the page is divided into 2 parts. So
Yes.
read it very quickly, because it will not be longer than 10 lines. Like that's the maximum. So it will not take more than 15 seconds. So you can still read it. Okay, guys, so 6 minutes, and I'll be waiting for your answers for questions 4, 5, and 6. Okay, guys, let's explore our answers together. Okay, now here is the thing. What does the author suggest about the sorry, I need to say that. Transgenic studies done in the 1980s and 90s. Now, first of all, you know, when I'm talking about the studies in 1980s and 90s, I know that the first time those studies are mentioned in line 30, right? So throughout the 1980s and 90s, studies provided proof of principle as scientists created transgenic mice, sheep, goats, pigs, cattle, etc. So when I go to the evidence question, immediately I can say that A and B are wrong. Why? Because the first time those studies in 1980s and 1990s, that was mentioned in line 30, first time. So of course, the evidence is not in the line 16 to 19 or 25 to 28. Okay, so I think this is, of course, 37. So it's either C or D. But remember, to get context, we can start from the beginning of the, the paragraph. I know that now my evidence can be either these two lines or these two lines. That's what it must be, one of them, because if we go before, right, they never mentioned the studies of 1980s and 90s. Maybe here they mentioned the other species in 1980s, gave scientists an idea, but where is the 90s? It's missing in this part, right? And here they're not talking about studies, they're talking about the creation of the first transgenic animals. So we have to be careful about that. We have to be sometimes smart about it so that we can save time, energy, and get the right answer. So let's see. So in 1980s and 90s, studies provided proof of principle as scientists created transgenic mice, sheep, goats, pigs, cattle, etc., that did in fact make therapeutic compounds in their milk. So this is what the studies are about. They told us that we can make therapeutic compounds in transgenic animals' milk. That's the point. The first one, now, out of the options C and D as evidence, at first, this work was merely gee whiz. Now, gee whiz, what does it mean? Do we know this expression? Gee whiz?
Smart or no? No.
Not really.
Shocking or surprised?
All right, here's the thing. Yeah, so gee whiz, it's about something exciting, okay? It's interesting news that everybody feels happy about, okay? Gee whiz, like something interesting. So gee whiz, scientific geekery. Of course, you know geeks and nerds. So geekery is the noun of geek. And, people just felt excited about it. So at first, this work was just exciting scientific geekery. That's what does it mean, gee whiz? Exciting, interesting, that, people love it. But usually this is for a temporary, period of time. Lab-bound thought experiments come true. So what that means, what this sentence means, that people did not really believe, because remember, here the sentence itself says, at first, this work, and we have to ask ourselves, what is that work? Simply, it's creating transgenic animals, okay? And these animals will give us therapeutic compounds, medicine. From where? In their milk, from their milk. So I can summarize these two lines by saying people did not really believe that. They just thought, okay, this is some interesting scientific work, and that's it. They didn't really believe in the idea. But as you can see in the next sentence, that all changed. This point of view that people had about transgenic animals, it all changed with Atrin, a drug produced by the Massachusetts from GTC Biotherapeutics. All right, here's the thing now. I go to the options. I'm not sure about the evidence yet. Is it the lines in C, 34 and 35, or is it the lines in D, 36 and 37? Look, first of all, in these 4 lines, I have nothing about the limit of, you know, the expensive nature of animal research. That's wrong. They, or D, they focused only on the molecular properties of cows, goats, and sheep, because it's already mentioned that we also have pigs, cattle, rabbits. So at least now I'm 100% that A and D are wrong. And that's what we usually do, eliminate the wrong answers. Now, is it B or C? They were not expected to get, because remember, yield, produce, get products ready for human use. That's what the lines in C are saying. Or D, they were completed when an anticoagulant compound was identified. And here is the trick, that the studies were completed when an anticoagulant compound was identified. First of all, they were completed already. But what happened is that the point of view of people about transgenic animals changed. That's the first mistake. Okay, let's say, no, that's not accurate. Even if we think it's not about being completed or not, when you continue, an anticoagulant compound was identified. That's different. Now look, we know that atrin, it's a drug and it's an antithrombin, if we continue reading, and that it's an anticoagulant that can be used to prevent life-threatening blood clots, but it wasn't identified. What is the word? It was produced. And there is a big difference between producing something and just identifying something. So that's another issue. It wasn't just identified, because identified, it means people discovered it, people found it. But here, no, we produced it. That's another point. I'm just showing you how you should be careful about the words, they change, okay? And number 3, when you say an anticoagulant was produced, we're not talking about just anticoagulant, because anticoagulants are, you know, compounds that we have in our bodies already. But this is a drug, and this drug was produced. So C is wrong, okay? While if I look at B, they were not expected to yield products ready for human use. Where is that mentioned? Here. What people did not believe in this word. They just thought it's, you know, interesting scientific geekery, and it's limited in the lab, because look, it's mentioned lab bound. What does that mean, lab bound? It means limited in the lab. It doesn't give us something ready for human use. Thought experiments come true. So here the answer is B, okay? And the evidence, as we already mentioned now, it is C. Sometimes the questions are tricky. You need to be a little bit deep in your analyzing to get the difference between 2 options. Now, the last question says, the phrase liquid gold most directly suggests that. Again, remember, we said when they give you a specific line in the question, most of the time the answer is not in that line. So as we said, you either start from the beginning of the paragraph if it's short, or if it's a long paragraph, again, like here, you can just go back 1 or 2 sentences before. So liquid gold is here. I can, for example, you know, start from here. So when the transgenic females lactated, which means they started to produce milk, the promoter turned the transgene on the goat's udders filled with milk. So now we have milk containing what? The antithrombin that we're talking about. So now the medicine is already in the milk of those transgenic goats. All that was left to do, okay, so since now we have medicine in their milk, what should we do? Is just to collect the milk. Then, of course, we need to extract and purify the protein to take the protein out of the milk. Et voila, human medicine. What is the result? It's a human medicine. Good. And for GTC, that's the important part. What is GTC? Again, if we read from the beginning, we will know that this is the company that made the drug. Okay, so for us, what's the benefit? It's a human medicine. For the company, it's liquid gold. Why is it liquid gold? Because this drug, atrin, It hit the market in 2006, becoming the world's first transgenic animal drug. So what do they mean? What do they imply by saying that this is liquid gold, right? Most of us actually look, chose the right answer, which is D. Atrin has proved to be a financially, money-wise, beneficial, but for whom? For the company, GTC, because it hit the market in 2006 and it became #1 in the whole world as a, medicine taken from transgenic animals. Okay, we know that C is wrong because it didn't increase the milk production. It's the same amount of milk, but now this milk itself is more valuable because it contains the medicine, and it's not C. Maybe when we read A, GTC has invested a great deal of money, so we see the word money, but remember, here they're talking about the micro-injection technique, which is something mentioned earlier, not in this specific context, so it can be misleading or tricky. But now we know that the answer is D. It's described as liquid gold because it was financially beneficial for the company GTC. Do we have any question? Where is everybody? Only Radwa is with me now. Everybody else, I don't know where they are.
I'm here.
Yeah, Tasneem is also usually with us, but sometimes you disappear. I don't know what happens to you. Okay, guys, so, this is the right, I hope that this is, of course, the right technique for answering inference question. It's the same as a statement, but you need to be more patient because the information is not mentioned there directly. It's your job to read, to get the context, to connect information together, and then ask yourself questions that will lead to the right answer. Okay, that's it for now. We're gonna have a break as usual for 15 minutes, and we're gonna come back at 8:55. Please don't be late. Once it's 8:55, come back and prepare yourself and open up your cameras, guys. Okay, guys, so now we are back. Let's get started. Why? Why is that? Okay, so now I sent you on the group a document that's called text structure. Okay, and here we're talking about different types of questions. What we're going to focus on today is the function question. Function simply here means purpose. Okay, but the difference between the purpose question and the function question is that the purpose question is a general question for the whole passage, but function question is just for a specific part of the passage. Okay, so they will give you usually, okay, so again, we can write here that specific lines from a passage are usually given in the question. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is that what kind of words do we find in these questions? Look, you can also, if you want, you can call it the to question. What does it mean? Every single word, every single function question must have the word to. So you'll see questions of function like saying primarily to. So like the author mentions this idea primarily to, mainly to, okay, or something serves to, sometimes just in order to, or as simple as that, okay, because it's a function question, it's asking about the purpose, okay, and that's why, as you can see here, guys, the focus is on why. Okay, so what you're trying to answer in this question is why does the author mention this piece of information? Okay, and we need, of course, as usual, we need to go back to the beginning of the paragraph as usual. Why? To get the context. Okay, and then try to understand what's going on there. When we get the context, we ask ourselves, okay, how does this piece of information that's mentioned in the question, how are these lines mentioned in the question, you know, supporting the discussion that's happening in the passage? Okay, so now I'm going to show you the document I shared with you here. So as you can see, they're telling us that, of course, remember, function question is one of the text structure related questions. So they're telling us here that text structure questions on the reading test come in two basic forms. One kind will ask you to characterize in some way the overall structure of a passage. So this is a general question just asking you about the overall structure. In a few cases, this may be as simple as that, just recognizing the basic organizing principle of the passage. Again, it's about the relationship of ideas, cause effect, sequence, problem solution. In most cases, though, such questions will be more complicated and shaped by the content of the individual passage. Okay, for example, you have to track how the structure shifts over the course of the passage, and we're going to talk about that later. Now, everything we're talking here about is the general kind of question. So in this paragraph, when we read it, they are giving us different types of questions about text structure, but these are general questions. And we're gonna get to them next time, inshallah, when we start talking about general questions. But now we're talking about, as I said, the specific parts. So now the other kind of text structure question asks about the relationship between a specific part of a passage. Okay, it can be just a phrase or a sentence, and the passage as a whole. How does this specific part help develop the discussion of the passage as a whole? Okay, so maybe they ask you to identify a piece of information that's used in order to give an example, to support an idea, to add evidence or emphasis, to doubt something, to call an assumption into question, and so on. So here what they are telling us, guys, look, of course, remember, in this kind of question, you're not trying to answer the question what. You will not tell them what the passage is saying, because that's not the question. They're asking you, okay, this is what the passage is saying, but why? Okay? Now, let's see how that works. For example, here we have this question, number 13. It says, the author refers to what? Read warblers and sparrows. In this line 44, primarily to. Again, remember, I told you about the words that we usually find. Primarily to, mainly to, serves to, in order to, or just to. Once you see any of these at the end of a question, remember it's a function question, so you have to understand why, and it's about the relationship between this specific line or idea with the passage as a whole. Okay, this is what should, you know, happen in your mind when you think about this kind of question. Okay, guys. Now, let me just get you the passage here. Okay. And remember, since they mentioned the line 44, which is here, okay, so as you can see, this is 44, and these are the reed warblers and the sparrows. So as usual, we start from the beginning of the paragraph. Sometimes if you feel that this is not enough, yes, Yahya, you can then of course read something before, but usually you just start from the beginning of the paragraph. So let's see how this reference to reed warblers and sparrows work in the context here of the passage. So now they're telling us that before now, we knew that several animal migrants, and the first thing that we notice here is that we have a comma, from loggerheads to reed warblers to sparrows, and then another comma. So guys, what do we have here between the two commas as usual? What is this?
Positive.
What?
And a positive.
Okay. And here, what are they giving us
Can you
in
hear
this
me?
appositive phrase? Yes. What kind of information do we have here in the appositive phrase? What I'm saying, we know that several animal migrants, and then I'm saying in the appositive phrase from loggerheads to reed warblers to sparrows. What are these?
Examples.
Okay, good. Thank you. So what I'm having here in this appositive phrase is a list of examples to what? To several or of several animal migrants. Okay, what about them now? So we know that they had some way of working out the longitude, or you can say longitude. You know, when we talk about Earth, in the middle here, we can draw a virtual line that's called the equator, right? So these lines that go from west to east, these are called latitudes. And the other lines that go from, you know, north to south, these are what we call longitudes.
Latitude again?
What?
Saying what are latitudes?
The lines that go from west to east, you know, because sometimes when we study the location of places on Earth and so on, we use two kinds of lines. We use latitudes and longitudes.
Okay.
So they are telling us that these animal migrants, and again, we're giving examples, loggerheads, reed warblers, and sparrows. So what about them? They had some way working out longitude, like they can locate themselves and they can find out where they are based on the longitude, because they can work out, they can find out which longitudes they are on. But no one knew how. We don't know how they do that. We know, as scientists, of course, I'm talking now, we know that these several animal migrants, they can locate themselves using longitudes, but we don't know how they can do that. Okay, that's the sentence, that's the context. And remember, we are just asked about the reference to reed warblers and sparrows, but we read more, as we did now, from the beginning of the paragraph to the end of the sentence at least, to get the context. Why are they referred to? To give examples. Give examples to what? Animal migrants. Okay, what are these animal migrants doing? They have one way to find out, you know, or work out longitude. But remember that here in the question, they mentioned only two examples, reed warblers and sparrows. But remember, the original text includes another example, which is the loggerheads. Okay, because actually they didn't miss it. They intentionally left it out. And you will see that in the options A, B, C, and D. So again, think about the options that you have now. Why are they referring to reed warblers and sparrows in this passage? What is the main purpose of mentioning these two examples? To do what? Look at the options A, B, C, and D, and please send me your answer on the chat box. Okay, guys, so now it seems that most of us agree on one answer, which is B, and yes, that's the right answer. So the function, the primary purpose of referring to these two animals, as we said, is to provide them as examples of a species that share one of the loggerhead turtle's abilities. And that's why they left out loggerheads in this question, because they made it as part of the answer. That these two animals or species like reed warblers and sparrows, they share one of the abilities of the loggerheads. Again, if they ask us what is that ability that they share, now we know that they can work out the longitude. Okay, now we have another passage, of course, and this time we have two questions. So we're going to do these two questions together. Okay, guys. The first question here, 11. The references to shoemaker, programmer, and apple farmer, again, we have specific lines mentioned. Again, look, primarily serve to. So from this phrase, I know, again, that this is a function question. So when we go back to the passage, I'm looking for these keywords, of course. So here, as you can see, so now here we have the best shoemaker, the best programmer, and the best apple farmer. Now again, do not just read those lines, because the options that you will have, A, B, C, and D, they will be misleading if you just depend on this part. What do? Go back to the beginning of the paragraph, okay? Why? Because we're gonna start from the first sentence. The first sentence, what do we have, guys? We talked about that before. Topic sentence. Topic sentence means we have the main idea. So if I understand the main idea of the whole paragraph, I will understand all the other supporting details that follow, okay? If you base your answer, again, only on the lines where you can find the keywords, it's not gonna help you. Remember, every single kind of question, it has its own type of finding the answer. If you remember, when we talked about vocabulary, it's different from statements. Statements is different from inferences, and all of these are different from function. That's why you have to decide on the type of the question first, because each type has its own, way or strategy to find the answer. All right, so let's start from the beginning of the paragraph. The new technologies, okay, so this is the subject of the discussion now. What about these technologies? They are inherently social and personal. Good, that's the topic sentence, which means all the other details that will follow this sentence in the paragraph will just be supporting this idea, because this is your topic sentence, okay? New technologies are social and personal. How? They will explain. They help us create what? Communities, and this is part of being social, right? Around interests, identities, and common personal challenges, and this is all personal, interests, identities, and so on. They allow us to gain direct access to what? To a worldwide community. Again, we have the issue of communities here, which is social. And they take anonymity out of our economic transactions. Anonymity is it's the noun of anonymous, which means unknown. So they take this idea of being unknown out of our economic transactions. We can assess, remember, now all we're trying to do here is just to support the main idea of being social. About what? Again, new technologies. So we can assess those we don't know by checking their reputations as buyers and sellers on eBay. So that's example number 1. Or by following their Twitter streams. That's number 2. We can look up their friends on Facebook. Number 3. We can watch their YouTube videos. That's number 4. And then you will see, guys, that the part they mentioned in the question about the shoemaker, programmer, and apple farmer, these references are also examples to support the idea that technologies are social. Why? Because here they're saying that we can easily get people's advice on where to find the best shoemaker in Brazil, the best programmer in India, and the best apple farmer in our local community. Why? Because again, we have worldwide communities, and these communities are created by the new technologies that are social. So remember, you cannot answer the question that is about this part unless you understand the main idea that's mentioned in the paragraph. Okay? All right, now if we go to the options that we have here, so why do we have these references? Why are we referring to the shoemaker, to the programmer, to the apple farmer? First of all, each word here, shoemaker, programmer, and apple farmer, it's preceded by the best programmer, the best shoemaker, the best apple farmer. So here, if you just read the sentence alone without going back to the main discussion, you can be tricked, because here they are saying to illustrate the quality of products and services in countries around the world. Wrong. Remember, my answer is here. I'm talking about new technology and how it's social. That's it. Emphasize the broad reach of technologies used to connect people. Okay, so here I have to, I'm trying just to use these references to emphasize what? The wide reach of technologies. So yeah, here I'm talking about technologies to connect people. That's social. So B works. But let's check C and D quickly to demonstrate that recommendations made online are trustworthy. Again, you can choose this answer if you only read the specific references, and that's tricky. Don't do that. Call attention to the limits of the expansion of the global economy. That's the opposite. We're trying to, say that technologies can show you different parts of the world, Brazil, India, our local community, and so on. So there is quite the opposite. So look, here is the thing. So now when you think about the options, D is the opposite. A and C, they are limited, which means you choose them only if you read the specific lines mentioned. But B is going back to the context, understand again the main point, and then how this part, how these references they are asking us about are related to the main point. The main point was about how we use technologies to connect people. Okay, so why am I referring to these things? To emphasize the broad reach of those technologies. And now I understand the function of this information, and the answer is B. Okay, so now what I'm going to do actually for question number 12, I need you to do it on your own. It's the same passage. If you go, you'll find it that it's the first paragraph. It starts with visitors to the Soviet Union in the 1960s and 70s, because the question says, question number 12, the passage's discussion of life in the Soviet Union in 1960s and 70s primarily served to what? So again, that's, a function question. It's talking about why we are discussing the life of the Soviet Union in 1960s and 70s, which means you have to read the paragraph, find the main idea, and try to see what is the main purpose of discussing this kind of life that in the Soviet Union in 1960s and 70s. And as usual, I'll be waiting for you to send me your answers on the answer box. Okay. All right. Please confirm by raising your hand, sending a thumbs up, whatever you can.
Yes.
All right. So please, guys, try to answer this question by doing the same thing we're doing. Go back to the beginning of the paragraph, get the main idea, get the context, understand the function. Come on, guys, I'm waiting for your answers. I received some answers, but I'm still waiting for the others. So please send me your answers now. Okay, so for those who send their answers, you all got the right answer, which is A. Okay. The whole idea is to give an introduction about the concept of social networking. And yes, that's the right answer. Okay, guys, so today, look, now I'm just like you. I'm not using my camera anymore. How does that feel? Anyway, so today we covered inferences and function. I need you always just to keep in mind the covered materials that we have, the covered skills. So we have vocabulary in context, number 1, statements, number 2, inferences, number 3, also the evidence question that was accompanying the statement and inference questions, number 4, and now function number 5, okay? So far, these are the main skills that we covered in the reading test. Next time, inshallah, we're gonna try to cover some other skills, but that's it for today. All right, guys. We will have no homework this time.
Can I ask something?
Yep, please, go ahead.
I don't know if it's the right time, but yeah, remember the 3 tests you said that you would
Yeah,
upload? Yeah, I didn't find them on the platform. Under which title are they?
okay. So let me send them on WhatsApp, but you will find, okay, just give me a second.
If you want, I'll share my screen. I have the platform. Like,
Okay, can you share your screen? I'm not sure you can, so.
yeah, I can, but you have to let me just 1 second.
Just
yeah, I can if you want, but you have to let me, give me permission.
Just a second. Okay, Tasneem, let's see. Try now to share your screen, please.
Okay. Yeah, this one. Can you see it?
Just a second. Okay, so go to the SAT English course.
Yeah. Where?
All right,
You
go
see?
scroll down to the end, all the way down. Yeah, you see reading tests, practice tests, college board tests, 1 to 4.
Yeah, these.
Yeah, 4 tests. We already did number 1 together, but you still have 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, guys, so that's it for today, and see you next time, inshallah. Goodbye.